Today I am going to explain The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. Khushwant Singh, 1915 to 2014, was an Indian author, lawyer, diplomat, journalist, and politician. He was the editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India, the National Herald, and the Hindustan Times. The Portrait of a Lady is a beautiful pen picture of the writer's grandmother who was old, wrinkled, and fat. She had a stoop and walked about with a hand on her waist. She was a deeply religious woman. Khushwant Singh lived with her in their village home and has given a graphic account, that is, a detailed account of his days spent with her when he was a little boy. Khushwant Singh's grandmother was very old with wrinkles all over her face. She was so old that she could not grow older anymore. That is, she looked the same age to the author as she had looked 20 years back. It was hard to believe that she was young and pretty and had had a husband. The thought of her being pretty was almost disgusting and repelling. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful, like a winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. He always saw her as a peaceful, calm, and content person, someone very comfortable and easy to be with. His grandfather's portrait was on the wall of a drawing room. He too looked very old. He was indeed a grandfatherly figure who could have lots of grandchildren, but one could not think he ever had a wife and children. It was difficult for Khushwant Singh to imagine his grandfather and grandmother being young enough to be father and mother. Khushwant Singh's parents left for the city. They left him in the care of his grandmother. His grandmother was a very good friend of his. She used to wake him up in the morning, bathe him, and dress him. She plastered his wooden slate. She gave him breakfast of buttered stale chapati with sugar sprinkled on it. She accompanied him to school. The school was attached to a temple. The children sat in the veranda and the priest taught them alphabet and morning prayer. While the author sat learning with other children, the grandmother sat inside the temple reading scriptures. When the school was over, they returned home together. She always carried several stale chapatis which she fed to the village dogs. When the writer's parents were settled in the city, they sent for them. This was a turning point in their friendship. Here in City 2, the writer shared the same room with his grandmother. But she could not accompany him to school. He went to an English school by bus. When he came back from school, she would ask him what he was taught at the school. He would tell her English words and things about science. She could not understand English and did not believe in science. She was unhappy to know that they did not teach about God. One day Khushwant Singh told her that they were going to teach him music. This news disturbed her because she did not believe that music was meant for gentlefolk. She almost stopped talking to him after that. When he went to university, he got a separate room. This was an end to their long friendship. There were no street dogs to feed in the city, so she took to feeding sparrows. She used to sit in the veranda and broke chapatis into pieces. Thousands of birds would chirp around her. They perched on her legs and shoulders. She never shooed them away. She only smiled. The rest of the day she spent at her spinning wheel and reciting prayers. The time she spent with the sparrows was the best time of the day for her. The writer was going abroad. The grandmother went to the railway station to see him off. She spoke nothing. She put her arms around him and kissed his forehead. The writer believed that it was their last physical contact, a touch he cherished. He was going away for 5 years and was doubtful about seeing her again. But she was there when he came back. She was happy. In the evening, she collected the women of the neighborhood and beat an old drum for hours and sang of the homecoming of warriors. For the first time, she had missed her prayers. Then she was taken slightly ill. The doctor said there was nothing to worry about. But the grandmother stopped talking. She said her end was near. She began to tell the beads, and her lips moved in silent prayer as usual. After some time, she died. Her body was laid on the floor and covered with a red shawl. Thousands of sparrows came and sat quietly around her. The writer's mother broke some bread and threw it to the birds, as the grandmother used to. But the sparrows took no notice of the crumbs. After the body was taken away for cremation, they flew away quietly, leaving the crumbs of bread lying there untouched, which were swept away the next day. The grandmother was a gentle, pious lady whose death was even mourned by nature.